Chit Chat Show. I'm your host Dina Nazari, and for today's episode, we have a special guest. Please join me in welcoming the CEO of Apple, Jana Abdelhamid. Ms. Jana is here today to talk to us about something that we can all relate to, but in a business aspect. So, Ms. Jana, what are you going to talk to us about today?
Thank you, Ms. Dina, for the introduction. Today, I'm going to be discussing tips on how to write persuasive messages.
I'm quite interested in this topic because even though I'm 25, I can still never convince my parents to go out past 10 p.m.
It's going to stay this way till we get married. Hopefully, today I will be able to help you, not just in your personal life, but also in your business career as well.
So, Ms. Jana, is being persuasive an important skill to have?
Yes, successful businesses rely on persuasive messages. Nowadays, even if you have the best idea in the world, you will not be able to sell your idea without a persuasive technique. Persuasion is the attempt to change an audience's attitudes, beliefs, or actions.
Can you please tell us what are the 3 stages towards writing persuasive messages?
Yes, of course. The 3 stages are planning persuasive messages, writing persuasive messages, and completing persuasive messages.
Can you talk to me about the first stage, which is planning persuasive messages?
First of all, you have to analyze the situation. There are a few questions that you should ask yourself before writing your persuasive message. Who is my audience? What are their needs? What do I want them to do? And how might they resist?
Why do we need to keep these questions in mind?
Persuasive messages are closely connected to your audience's desires and interests. Moreover, to understand your audience's needs, you have to look at 2 categories. The first category is demographics, which includes age, gender, and education. And the second category is psychographics, which includes lifestyle, personality, and attitudes.
Don't we also have to take into consideration their cultural expectations to prevent any misunderstandings?
Yes, exactly. The second aspect would be gathering information to be able to create a more effective persuasive message.
So what is the third aspect?
The third aspect is selecting the right medium. For example, emails, instant messages, podcasts. In Apple, for example, we hire a team that is responsible for selecting which medium is best for both us and our clients.
Do we always have to use one medium?
No, some people use 2 or more media in order to follow up and give the audience more options.
What is the fourth aspect of planning persuasive message?
The fourth and last aspect of planning a persuasive message is organizing your information. It is where you explain how the topic that you're talking about will help your audience. You have to focus on one main idea. If you try making a persuasive message without focusing on one central problem or a problem that they don't care about the most, then the message won't be as effective as it's supposed to be in persuading them.
Does this mean that we have to use the indirect approach when sending persuasive messages?
Yes, as most persuasive messages use the indirect approach. You would want to explain your reasons and build interest before asking for a decision.
Does this mean that we use the direct approach when we're an expert, but we use an indirect approach when we are not credible and need to build interest before asking for a decision?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you for explaining how to plan a persuasive message. Can you now explain to us how to write a persuasive message?
Yes, of course. There is only one aspect in this part, which is to encourage positive response to your message. There are certain things that you have to consider achieving this. The first thing is to use positive and polite language.
So you need to be careful to ensure not to accidentally insult your readers. Doesn't this indicate that we also have to respect everyone's cultures?
Yes, that's actually the second aspect. As your readers are worldwide, you have to make sure that the message you're conveying does not get taken offensively by anyone. The third aspect is to be sensitive with the organizational culture. When our company sends messages to other companies, we have to put the organizational culture into consideration because each company has its own organizational culture. Some organizations handle disagreements in an indirect or secret manner, while others allow sharing of different viewpoints in open discussions.
What about establishing your credibility?
You must be able to convince people that you know what you're talking about and that you're not trying to mislead them. There are certain techniques that can be used to achieve this. So, Ms. Dina, do you have any idea how this can be achieved?
Yes. First of all, you have to use simple language so that everyone can understand the message easily. Secondly, you should provide objective evidence for the claims and promises you make. Thirdly, you should identify your sources. Then, you should establish common grounds by emphasizing beliefs, attitudes, and background experiences you have in common with the audience. You also need to put your audience's best interests into consideration. Finally, you should persuade with logic, evidence, and compelling narratives rather than trying to force with hard sell tactics.
What do you mean by hard sell tactics?
Hard sell tactics is being pressured into making a decision, which makes your customer less inclined to listen to what you have to say.
Yes, exactly. This was the final aspect of writing a persuasive message.
What about the third stage of the writing process of the persuasive message?
The third stage is completing a persuasive message. When you evaluate your content, try to judge your argument objectively and not overestimate your credibility. You should also proofread your message and ask other people to proofread for you as well.
Okay, now we should move on to the strategies of the persuasive business message. Do you mind explaining why a business message is important?
Your success as a business person is closely tied to your ability to encourage others to accept new ideas, change old habits, or act on your recommendations. To effectively persuade your customers, there are four essential strategies, which are framing arguments, balancing emotional and logical appeals, reinforcing your position, and finally anticipating objections.
What do you mean by framing arguments?
When you want to frame your arguments for persuasive messages, you can use the indirect model, which is called the IDA model.
What does IDA stand for?
It stands for attention, interest, desire, and action.
Oh yes, I've heard of it before.
Oh, really? Then do you mind explaining it to us?
The first objective is attention, which encourages your audience to want to hear about your main idea, problem, or even product. An example would be starting your persuasive message with, do you want to be healthy, wealthy, and happy? For interest, you need to provide additional details for the audience to imagine how the idea might benefit them. For desire, you need to help the audience members embrace your idea by explaining how the change would benefit them by answering any potential objections. Finally, for action, you need to suggest that specific action you want your readers to take. You should also motivate them by saying, you will get 10% off by purchasing today.
Yes, exactly. However, there are also limitations when it comes to using the IDA model. The limitation that I would be mentioning today is that the IDA model is a unidirectional model, which is asking the audience for a decision rather than building a long-term relationship with them.
What is the second strategy for persuasive messages?
It is the balancing emotional and logical appeals. Emotional appeals call on audiences' feelings and sympathies rather than facts. For example, if you say the word comfort, security, success, compassion, then it can help put the audience in a positive frame of mind and help them accept your message. Logical appeals call on reasoning and evidence. There are three types of reasonings, which are analogy, induction, and deduction. Since you are a talk show host, then of course you know these reasonings. So would you like to explain them to us?
Yes. For analogy, you borrow something familiar to explain something unfamiliar. An example of this would be, a person is drowning in work, which indicates that someone has a lot of work to do. For induction, you work from a specific evidence to a general conclusion. An example for this would be, the first coin I pulled from my bag is a penny. The second coin I also pulled out of my bag is a penny. Therefore, all the coins in my bag are pennies. Lastly, for deduction, you work from a generalization to a specific conclusion. An example of this would be, all men are immortal, Harold is a man, therefore Harold is mortal.
Yes, exactly.
How do we make sure we are not using faulty logic?
First of all, you have to avoid hasty generalization by ensuring you have plenty of evidence before drawing a conclusion. Secondly, you should avoid circular reasoning. Circular reasoning is a logical fallacy in which you try to support your claim by restating it in different ways. Additionally, you should avoid oversimplifying a complex issue. You should also avoid mistake assumptions of cause and effect, as you can't assume an effect is due to an unrelated cause. Moreover, you should avoid fault analogies by making sure that the two things being compared are similar. Finally, you should avoid illogical support, which indicates that your claims should have relevant evidence.
That's great. Can you tell me what is the third strategy of persuasive business messages?
It is reinforcing your position. You should look for ways to boost the strength of your position by asking questions like, are all your claims supported by believable evidence? Moreover, using anecdotes, which are brief stories, will help your audience grasp the meaning and importance of your arguments. As for the fourth and last strategy, it is anticipating the objection. As a talk show host, you probably have to deal with a lot of objections.
Yes, the best way to deal with audience resistance is to anticipate as many objections as you can and address them in your message before your audience can even bring them up. Ms. Jenna, could you please provide us with common examples of persuasive business messages?
There are 3 examples of persuasive messages, which are requests for action, presentations of ideas, and claims and requests for adjustment. The most common type is requests for action. In requests for action, you need to gain credibility and make your readers believe that your idea will solve a significant problem in order for you to close with a request for a specific action. The second example is presentations of ideas. Sometimes the objective of persuasive messages is to simply encourage people to consider a new idea. The third example is claims and requests for adjustment. Consumers and professionals sometimes encounter situations in which they believe that they haven't received a fair deal by following normal procedures. Therefore, you send a message on how you would want the issue to be resolved.
Thank you, Ms. Jenna. This was very informative. Now we're going to discuss marketing and sales messages. Marketing messages basically focus on introducing new brands to the public and encouraging them to go to the brand, while sales messages convince customers to purchase products or services. Can you please explain how to plan marketing and sales messages?
Yes, Ms. Dina. There are 4 steps to plan marketing and sales messages. The first step is assessing audience's needs, which depends on the market that you're targeting. The second step is analyzing your competition. The third step is determining key selling points and benefits. Key selling points are the most attractive features of a certain product or a service. Benefits are the advantages that the purchasers will receive from those features. Lastly, the fourth step is anticipating purchase objections beforehand.
What about writing marketing and sales messages?
When writing marketing and sales messages, use the IDA model, which was explained earlier.
What about writing promotional messages for social media?
Social media messages are more conversational with the consumers. Do you have experience with this?
Yes, you need to facilitate community building, such as Facebook pages, which gives your audience a chance to interact with you. You also need to listen to your audience as much as you talk. Then, you need to initiate and respond to conversations within the community, which is by providing all of the information needed to customers. An example of this would be a Q&A. Additionally, you need to identify and support your champions, as they are the ones that help spread your messages and help your customers use your products. You also need to be real with your customers and not deceive them in order to get a positive response from them. Moreover, you shouldn't rely on the news media to distribute your messages, as they can be deceiving. Lastly, you should integrate conventional marketing and sales strategies at the right time and in the right places.
This was very insightful, Ms. Dina.
Thank you. Now we should discuss the last point before wrapping up this episode. The last point is how to maintain high standards of ethics. Can you explain to us why it is important to maintain high standards of business ethics?
To maintain the highest standards of business ethics, you should always demonstrate the you attitude by showing honest concern for your audience's needs and interests. There are a couple of guidelines that you need to follow to maintain the ethical standard related to marketing and sales messages. The first one is that you must be truthful and non-deceptive. You must back up your claims with evidence. You need to ensure not to bait your customers to purchase something. Your messages towards children should follow specific rules. When sending a message, you need to ensure that you fulfill the end of your bargain. Lastly, make sure that you don't use a person's name or photo without their consent.
Thank you so much for your explanation, Ms. Jannah. With regards to persuasive messages, it was an honor having you here today.
Thank you so much for having me here, and I hope all the viewers benefited from our episode today.
Yes, definitely. Thank you all for tuning in with another episode of the Chit Chat Show. Please click on the link below for any additional questions you may have, and we'll be returning to answer them in a couple of days. Welcome to the After Show podcast, where all the questions related to the previous interview will be answered. So the first and most asked question that we received was, what is AIDA? This question was asked by Atiya, Majid, Layan, Abdul, Yahya, Hassan, Lujain, and Karim. AIDA stands for Attention, Interest, Desire, and Action. Attention is something that grabs your audience's interest within seconds, and your audience would want to know more about your main idea. In interest, you need to mention certain details to let the audience picture how they're going to benefit from your main idea. As for desire, you need to answer any potential objections or doubts that the audience may face. Finally, for action, you need to suggest the specific action you want your readers to take.
The second question is, what are the benefits and limitations of AIDA? This question was asked by Amal and Rima. The advantage of AIDA model is that it identifies what a customer goes through before buying a product or service. Therefore, if you accomplish these 4 stages, then your customers will be more willing to purchase your product or service. However, the limitation is that it is a unidirectional model, which means asking the audience for a decision rather than building a long-term relationship with them.
The third question that was asked is, how can the AIDA model be used with the direct approach? This was asked by Karim. When you want to use the AIDA model for the direct approach, you can use your main idea as the attention getter, build interest with your argument, create desire with your evidence, and re-emphasize your main idea in the action phase with the specific action you want your audience to take.
The fourth question is, why is it important to anticipate objections when planning and writing persuasive messages? This question was asked by Ahmed and Amal. If you anticipate the objections before planning and writing persuasive messages, you would be able to pinpoint certain factors that the potential customer would look at and emphasize it in your message to avoid any misunderstandings or concerns.
The fifth question that was asked is, what is the difference between marketing and sales messages? This was asked by Ahmed, Abdul, and Yahya. Marketing messages focus on introducing new brands to the public and encouraging customers to go to the brand, while sales messages convince customers to purchase products or services.
The sixth question is, why do we use the indirect approach when writing a persuasive message? This question was asked by Ahmed, Atiya, and Yahya. In the indirect approach, you would want to explain your reasons and build interest before asking for a decision. This is because when it comes to persuasive messages, potential clients wouldn't want to hear the main idea from the beginning and would want to see evidence on how they would benefit and check if the sources are credible before making a final decision about the main idea or purchase.
The seventh question that was asked is, what is the difference between demographics and psychographics? This was asked by Hassan, Yahya, Rima, and Majid. Demographics is the study of a population that is based on age, gender, and education, while psychographics describe traits like lifestyle, personality, or attitudes.
The eighth question is, what is bait and switch? This question was asked by Amal. Bait and switch advertising is trying to attract buyers by advertising a product that you don't intend to sell and then try to sell them another product, which is usually more expensive. So you're basically trying to trick your customers, which is illegal.
The ninth question that was asked is, what are the applications of emotional and logical appeals? This was asked by Majid. Emotional appeals call on the audience's feelings and emotions rather on facts. For example, if you hear a positive, encouraging word, then this would help put the audience frame in a positive mind. On the other hand, logical appeals call on reasoning and evidence, which needs to be presented to make your audience believe what you're trying to say based on factual evidence. This would increase the chances of them accepting your message.
The 10th question is, how can we maintain a high standard of ethics on social media messages? This question was asked by Atiya. To maintain the highest standards of ethics, business ethics, on social media messages, you should always demonstrate the you attitude. The you attitude shows how much you care about your audience's needs and interests, which will cause the audience to listen to your main ideas.
The 11th question that was asked are, what are the factors we should consider to develop an ethical persuasive message? This question was asked by Lujane. There are several factors that we should consider when developing an ethical persuasive message. Firstly, you must be honest and truthful. Secondly, you must back your claims with reliable evidence. Thirdly, you need to ensure that you do not bait or trick your customers into purchasing something. Your messages that are addressing children should follow some specific rules. Additionally, when sending a message, you need to make sure that you complete your end of the deal. Finally, you have to make sure that you're not using someone's name or photograph without their consent.
The 12th question is, what are mobile users' reaction when a website is too slow to load or are confusing to use? This question was asked by Abdul. The mobile user's reaction would be negative as people nowadays are very impatient whilst using their mobile phones. Therefore, if the website is too slow, it will result in the mobile user clicking off the link in the first few seconds.
The 13th question asks us, what types of reasoning might we use when using a logical appeal? This question was asked by Rima. There are 3 types of reasonings, which are analogy, induction, and deduction. For analogy, you borrow something familiar to explain something unfamiliar. For induction, you work from a specific evidence to a general conclusion. Finally, for deduction, it is the exact opposite of induction. So instead, you work from a generalization to a specific conclusion.
The 14th question is, what type of approach is the best for persuasive messages and why? This question was asked by Abdul and Rima. As we have mentioned previously, the best way to write a persuasive message is using the indirect approach. This is because the writer needs to build his or her case by providing all the information needed for the clients and presenting themselves as credible before mentioning what they want their clients to do.
For the last question, it was asked, what is the relationship between features and benefits? This was asked by Ahmed. Features are aspects of an idea or product, while benefits are the advantages that the readers will receive from those features. And this wraps up the questions for our podcast today. Thank you so much for tuning in and stay tuned for our next after show podcast.